Hello, right. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you ever so much for joining today's episode 10 of our Teacher Talking Time. Really nice to have everybody here. I hope you're all doing very well. I hope you're all safe, regardless of whatever's happening in the world at the moment. And if you have any questions whatsoever with regards to teaching, online learning, education, anything, please feel free to put in the chat, because I'll be more than happy to cover any questions that you may have for this 10th episode, our 10th live stream. And it's so good to see so many of you here. Now, let's get started. We have Margarita here, and she gives a sort of back to you, Margarita. So very nice to see you again. Any questions, feel free to place them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to cover any questions that you may have, but it's so nice to see you, especially Margarita. So nice to see you. Where are you from? Let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to welcome you. And anyway, today I thought I would talk about professional development and the importance of professional development, particularly in an online environment, and how things have evolved and developed with time since the pandemic, and how best to structure your own professional development. And you may be wondering what professional development is. I suppose if you've been living under a rock for a period of time, then professional development is essentially the act of improving oneself in terms of teaching, and particularly for educators, it's so important to develop yourself day by day, week by week, month and month, and you want to really be better than you were 5 years ago. If you started teaching 5 years ago, you really want to have made progress of teaching. So essentially, what is professional development? Well, there's a variety of things that you can do. There's certain aspects which you can follow. There's the formal courses that you could follow in terms of professional development, but there's something more informal that you could incorporate into your professional development. And one aspect of professional development is actually keeping a diary. It could be a physical diary like notebook and pen, or it could be in the form of a blog. Okay, right, we have Eric here, and Eric, he's almost on time. You missed the classic elevator music, I suppose, in the beginning, but nice to have you here, Eric, and very good to welcome you here. Today we're going to be talking about professional development and essentially what professional development is. So if you've got any questions regarding professional development, feel free to put it in the post. But anyhow, there's a couple of things that you could do with regards to professional development. One such thing is making a note, so pen, and a notebook. So if I get my notebook, excuse me, so pen and notebook, and then just writing down a couple of things of what went well in class, what didn't go well, and certain things that you could try and improve upon in your own teaching. So you could say, I didn't explain the grammatical point here, so I'm going to try and improve my explanation with my next lesson. Or I found myself talking too much, then I'm going to try and reduce how much I talk and allow the space for the students to talk as well. So whatever you're doing, the biggest thing to do with regards to professional development is actually writing down things that went well and things that you could improve upon. And if you focus on the aspects of professional development, focus on what you're teaching, then that would be really good. Anyway, the more formal aspects of professional development is actually doing a course or doing something that is formalized and recognized by your school or by others. And if you can do something which really helps lift your profile and demonstrates your commitment to the profession, then so much the better. The common thing is to do either a Tesol course, I suppose, if you haven't done a particular course like that, or a Tesol course. If you want to really lift your profile, a CELTA course or a Trinity Cert Tesol, these are great courses which really demonstrate to potential employers that you take the profession seriously, and it's really important that you do. Right, we have Margarita here, and Eric said, such a shame missing the music. So yeah, I'm very sorry. I did put on some festive Christmas music, or festive Christmas background elevator music, so shame you missed it, but big thing happening next week, which I'll be happy to share with everyone fairly soon. Margarita's here. She says, hello, I'm from Russia, a self-employed teacher. After 20 years of working at school, I left it and started online teaching. Well, congratulations. 20 years as a teacher is a long stretch. Myself now, at this time of year, although it's Christmas, I tend to reflect on my own professional development and also reflect on how I've done during the year. But also, more importantly, for this year, I tend to think about when I started as a teacher, because it was December 2005 when I first started teaching as an English language teacher, and that was when I moved to South Korea with my family. And I've now been teaching for 16 years, but hats off to you, Margarita. You've done 20 years, and that's commendable. That's really, really commendable. But how do you find online teaching now, and what's the biggest differences and challenges that you face with regards to teaching online compared to maybe a physical face-to-face environment? It'll be really interesting to see your insight and what you would consider are the differences and similarities to teaching online or face-to-face. Now, Charlie's here. Good afternoon. Just on my lunch break, covering classes this evening, so in a rush. Well, welcome to have you, Charlie. It's it's lovely to have so many of you here. And again, I hope you have a nice, relaxed lunch break, and hopefully this live stream isn't too much of too strenuous with regards to, pushing that work away from you and relaxing, because as teachers we all need to have a good decent break in between lessons. Charlie asks, are you teaching today? And actually I am. I was teaching this morning online with my regular student from Italy, and I finished that lesson at 12 o'clock about an hour ago, and I've got another class at 3 this afternoon, so 1 hour after this live stream. And this evening I've got another planned lesson as well, so not really a heavy schedule today. I try and not do too much on Monday because of the live stream, and I want to try and focus on this. But then later this week, particularly Thursday and Friday, I'm pretty busy, and I've also got a student who's booked up for Saturday as well, so things are starting to develop. But the big thing is it's Christmas, and I want to try and focus off, and I've scheduled off a couple of my availabilities over the Christmas, the festive period, and also over the New Year period as well, because I want to try and reduce my availability and not work over Christmas, as we all deserve a break, and especially since such a difficult year, and unfortunately things are not looking as rosy or as good as I hope they would be by this time. It appears that things are going back. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back in the UK in case of the Omicron variant and everything else like that. And on Tuesday, I've got my booster jab, so I have to go to the clinic and get my 3rd jab. Hopefully, they'll give me a discount. Buy 2, get 1 free. But yeah, no, it's all free in the UK with regards to the vaccines and booster jabs and everything. And the UK has seen a huge surge in terms of the COVID, so it's fairly fragile at the moment. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to Christmas, and if I do move my camera just a little bit, you may see the side of my Christmas tree. So I do try and lighten my mood and lighten my environment where I'm working from at home. And you can see maybe some of the decorations behind me, and the lights and the reflection from the window from my Christmas tree. I do have other lights around me. I'm trying to improve the environment and trying to lift my spirits, particularly during a Christmas festive period as well. Right, we've got Miriam. Hello, Miriam. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Which ESL sources do you teach from? Well, I'm going to split this question up into 2 aspects. I'm going to talk about the aspect of if I'm working within a language school and working privately for myself. Now, if I'm working for a language school, then they give me a dedicated course book. They give me the materials that I need to work from. So if I'm working from a particular course book, I have to adapt the material, I have to prepare the sort of activities and that sort of thing. And that's the sort of sources or materials that I use from within a particular educational institute or that side of things. But if I'm working privately, which is probably 2/3 of my time now, because unfortunately the pandemic has really battered down the private language industry in the UK. If I'm teaching privately, then I tend to use my own resources and develop the materials myself. One such thing that I tend to refer to is Lingua House, I believe. And this is what I want to try and share with you. I think I've shared this with everybody recently. There's a couple of sources that I tend to refer to, and let me just share my website or share the browser that I'm on. And so here you can see that I'm using Lingua House, and I would always recommend Lingua House to everybody, particularly English language teachers and that sort of thing. So here, let me put a link in the chat. So we've got Lingua House. Another aspect of other sources that I tend to use or supplement either if I'm teaching for a language school or teaching privately is, what is it? It's going to come to me in a moment. It's not something that I've used for quite a while now, but it is available. I'm just trying to remember what it is, but bear with me. Let me have a Google. Oh yes, I remember it now. I'm trying to Google it, but I remember exactly what I refer to. Okay, so here, as you can see, this one is ISL Collective. Really good resource as well. They have PowerPoints which you can download. They have worksheets, in Word, and it's free. It's all open sourced. The best thing about ISL Collective is that you can download the PowerPoint, you can download the Word documents, you can edit, you can adjust, and that's really, really useful. But the thing with Lingua House is all the material is PDF, and if you don't have a PDF writer or a PDF thing to change from PDF to Word conversion software, then you're going to find it very difficult to adjust or type over some of the material that's included here. This is where ISL Collective is really, really beneficial. Right, I'm going to go back to our next chat, and we've got another question here. We've got Elfinzilla. We've got Elfinzilla here. Really good name. Love your your image. Very good. Right, and before I move on to our next question, let me put the link here for ISL Collective in the chat, and there we are. Right, our next question is Edith. So hi there, missed last time. My question: how do you teach reading comprehension from a text from The Guardian? Thank you. Right, when it comes down to reading, essentially what you're trying to do is make the text, whatever it may be, as accessible as possible. And I would always follow a sort of format where I look at the topic in itself. What is the topic of the article? And then have a conversation with the student, if you're teaching one-to-one in that case. So I would say to the student, okay, let's have a chat, and I'll write down a couple of questions based on the particular topic of the article. This would theoretically activate what they call schemata, or the schema, the language. It would activate and prime that language, ready in preparation for the student to see the text. And after the brief discussion for 5-10 minutes, I would give feedback. And also before the lesson, what I would try and focus on is maybe collocations, like two words that go together, or a vocabulary from the particular text, and trying to pre-teach that type of vocabulary. And it does require a little bit of preparation. So you've got the vocabulary, you can, after a while, you start to be able to predict what your students may know and what they may not know in terms of the article itself. So I would go through and say, okay, this article here, I'm going to pick out 12 words, 8 to 12 words is a good number, and then go to a dictionary and try and find the definition, but maybe adjust the definition so it's easier for the student to understand. The next aspect of it I would do, particularly now online, is once you've matched the key vocabulary and the definition, I would get the student to predict the translation in their first language. So I say, okay, don't go to Google Translate immediately, but can you guess what the translation might be in your own language? And if the student is able to guess the translation, then and then they check and they're correct, it gives them some form of confidence of saying, well, actually, I don't need to rely upon this automated translation tool. I already have some awareness or knowledge, and I can predict or guess. And, if I'm right 80% of the time, forget Google Translate. I'm going to use my own brain, for example. Then, in terms of reading, I would get, if you have a group of students, this is what I used to do, is I would get the students to write comprehension questions themselves about the text, or pull out all the numbers from the text. This is usually a really good IELTS activity. Get all the numbers out of the text. Don't remove it from the text, but you say, okay, can you find what does this number refer to in the article? And, in groups, check yourselves and that sort of thing. So you've got two things that you could do as a post-read in getting students to write their own comprehension questions, or providing all the numbers and data from the article and getting students to try and find in detail what those numbers refer to. And then as a final thing, pulling out all the key language that you've looked at before the reading and then incorporating it into some form of the questions. So it's recycling, reinforcing what they studied before, and trying to use that language effectively. So in essence, I really need to do a video about that, because I can talk about it, but I hope it does make sense, Edith. That's how I would tackle an article. Another thing, I don't have my folder at the moment, but one thing that I did for my diploma was preparing a lesson about news articles, and looking at the news articles, and what I did was I tried to get students to match the newspaper headline to the corresponding picture. So I had like 5 headlines and 5 pictures related to the article. Then I gave them the first element or the first paragraph of each text. And so what I did was I got them moving around and matching pictures to headlines and headlines to first paragraphs. And then I gave them more detailed focus of like reading the rest of the article and comprehension questions, discussions, and what they found interesting, any new vocabulary and that sort of thing. But that's a bit more difficult to achieve within an online environment. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got Karen here. She says, good morning. My name is Karen Rudd from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Welcome. Very nice to have you here. Thank you ever so much, Karen, for joining us, and I really appreciate it. So she says, I've been teaching English on Preply for 6 months. The biggest issue with Preply I have is the students constantly rescheduling their lessons. I cannot depend on the paycheck from Preply, as the students are constantly rescheduling their lessons. And I take your point. It does happen to me, actually. So how best to tackle this? Well, as you know, yes, it's an unreliable source of income. I did do a recent video on YouTube with regards to my 6 months period of teaching online, and I did share some statistics at the end. And the one thing that stood out for me is after, it wasn't actually 6 months, it was over 6 months. I think it was about 7 months that I've been teaching. And so over that 7 months, I've earned about $3,500. So in essence, that equates to $500 a month, which isn't a lot, although it's increasing bit by bit. Now, in terms of students rescheduling, I can understand that. And the way I look at it is, yes, your private students or the students on Preply are going to be rescheduling, but I also say to my students, I understand things can get in the way in terms of your lessons and learning, but things get in the way for me as well. And so as much as you have a preference to adjust your schedule, and as much right as you have, I'm going to adjust the schedule from time to time because I have other things as well that require my commitment at that time. Now, it doesn't necessarily answer the issue about the dependence on Preply, because essentially it's unreliable, it's precarious, particularly trying to earn remotely, online, and using a platform like Preply. However, what I would suggest is to try and diversify your revenue streams. And it's easy for me to say, you need to try and find other sources of income, and it's very difficult at the moment in terms of the pandemic and that side of things. But a couple of things that you could do in terms of diversifying your income. You could set up a website, a blog. You don't need to pay to set up a blog. It can be all done free of charge, and you can start to advertise on this website. So if it's something related to language teaching, then you can advertise that. If it's to do with a hobby or interest, I would always recommend people to pursue a hobby or an interest. And I think it was Confucius who said, if you find a job that you enjoy, you don't have to work for the rest of your life. If you're able to blog about something that you really enjoy, something you're passionate about, that will come through with your blogging, your video work, and everything else like that. And it does take time to diversify your income. There's an element of selling through Amazon with links and that sort of thing. And so for me personally, yes, my income has taken a bit of a smashing with regards to my primary job. It's not as lucrative and commensurate to what I was earning pre-pandemic, but I understand things change and no one predicted this. We're all in the same boat at the end of the day. But what I have been doing and what I've been trying to push for is increasing my revenue in terms of other aspects, trying to advertise on my own personal blog, trying to trying to link in affiliate links to particular products and that sort of thing. And you can see within the description of my videos on YouTube and in this live stream that there's affiliate links, and it all sort of helps at the end of the day. But in terms of Preply and the fees that are being or the inflexibility or the rescheduling and the precarious nature of earning online, then trying to supplement your income through several sources are better than focusing on just one revenue stream. And that's one thing that I've learned throughout this pandemic. Maybe going forward, 2022, is not to have a heavy reliance on things will be okay if I just stick to this thing. You need to diversify, you need to adjust, you need to develop, you need to retrain, you need to offer different things, and that's the world we're living in, I suppose. But I totally understand where you're coming from, Karen. It's a difficult issue. I don't have the answer, but I hope what I'm saying does help or inspires you to do something. And I wish you've all the very best of luck with regards to moving forwards. Anyway, I hope that does help. Okay, so Margarita introduced herself. She said she's been teaching for 20 years. She's moved from a school to teaching privately online, not face-to-face, but online. And she says online teaching is more convenient and time-saving. Today, it's a perfect way out with all these restrictions and illnesses. And I totally agree. The biggest thing for me with regards to teaching online is having that interaction with everybody around me. I find it just so rewarding having someone else to talk to. And as much as I love my family and everything else like that, after 2 weeks of just speaking to your family with four walls, it kind of gets a bit anodyne, a bit depressing, a bit boring. But to teach students and have that interaction, that social interaction, something that they're probably keen for, so much better. I totally understand. Anyway, Margarita goes on. Although I miss the eye-to-eye interaction, the face-to-face interaction with the students, it seems that sometimes it's more effective to explain some grammar rules and do some activities when you're offline. Again, I completely agree. I think the whole world has shifted now, and things are never going to be the same. Yes, we may go back to a face-to-face environment, but teaching online is not going away. It's already here. We're on the cusp of a new era, I suppose, with regards to work, smart working, remote working, working from home. Yeah, and I totally agree. There's certain things that you can do in the classroom, that sort of knowledge that, when a student understands, has that aha moment, then you go, you've got it. And you can see that. But with the remote online environment where you see everybody on the screen, it's very difficult to replicate that. And it's tough. But I suppose the bonus is, as you mentioned, you have that interaction online, and rather than being isolated, I guess. Anyway, let's move on. Let me just remove and hide that. Right. Okay. So Miriam asks, how much Tesol Certified Esl teachers charge on Preply? Well, good question. Let me have my coffee. And bear with me. Right. When it comes down to advertising your services on Preply, you're going to be offering your services commensurate to a couple of things. 1, your experience. 2, qualifications. And 3, the sort of niche that you're trying to pursue. Now, if you are a certified teacher, you're going to be competing with other certified teachers. If you're uncertified, or you have one of these weekend certificates, then you're going to be competing with other people at the same of the same qualifications, certificates. Yeah. Now, what you need to do is you need to think about, how much am I worth within Preply, and how much do I want to take from my hourly rate post commission. So Preply, they do offer a particular rate, a commission rate, and you need to determine how much you want to earn post commission. If you have 5 years experience teaching online, you have a certificate, you have qualifications, then I would say your net worth is between $15 to $20 per hour. If you have very little, you're new, you're not graduated, you have a certificate in particular teaching or language teaching, then that will drop to like $10. If you have a master's, you have a certificate, diploma, what I'm earning, or what I'm not earning, but what I'm charging is $30 an hour. And you need to try and look at other profiles. Have a look at what other teachers of a similar qualification that you hold, similar experience that you hold, similar niche that you're focusing on, how much are they charging per hour? And if you can find out what others are charging, then you're going to be starting to compete with them. And there's a couple of things that I would push for when you're first starting out on Preply. Okay, if you have a look at the sort of profiles that you're trying to compete or trying to move into, have a look at what they're charging, have a look at their experience, have a look at their reviews, have a look at how many lessons that they've taught through this platform. And when you first start out, try and lower that rate by maybe $5. Say, if someone's charging $20 per hour for their courses or lessons, then lower it by $5, start at $15. And after I would say 2 months. You know, get your students to review your profile, get those reviews coming through, and ask them, please review my profile. You know, I've been teaching you for a while now. It'd be really appreciated if you could complete the review. Move that charge that you from $15 to $20, and don't put it back down. Although you may feel that you want to, do not do that. Keep it up at $20 and say, right, I've got 20 students that I'm teaching regularly now. They book during the week. I've got a variety, 20 hours of classes a week, say. Okay, I'm happy with that at my old rate. I'm not going to move their rate from 15 to 20 because they'll move elsewhere. I'm going to keep it at 15 and just say to my students, really appreciate all your support for me, pushing in and getting the experience in Preply as a way of saying thank you. I'm going to stick with the old rate for you, but any new students that wish to rebook or wish to book, then I'm going to keep it at $20. So many thanks and that sort of thing. And that's how I would recommend how you charge. Look at what others are charging. Go below what they're charging initially for 2 months. Build it up, get the reviews in, get the experience, push your rate up after 2 months, and then you'll start to build momentum. I first started at $20 an hour, and that was because I could see how much others were charging, and that's how much I aspired to earn initially. I pushed up $25 once I built a lot of momentum. Pushed it up $25, got all the reviews in. I'm now at $30 and I'm quite happy, and I'm not going to put it down from $30. But I certainly hope that helps, Miriam. And it gives you some idea of how best to market yourself within this platform. Right. Edith says, great, lots of sense for sure. We'll appreciate the video too. Very much appreciate that. So glad that helped Edith with regards to the reading idea. Right. Oh gosh, I've got a load of spam coming. Bear with me. Remove. Okay, boom. That's all done. Apologies, I get all sorts of rubbish sent through here sometimes. Right. Miriam asks, can you give a breakdown of a lesson plan of a 1 hour lesson from start to end? How much time do you spend on grammar, vocabulary, activities, explanation, reading, etc.? Okay, well, in terms of an online lesson, there's certain things that I try and pursue. Within an online environment, I try and focus on tasks in the lesson and tasks outside of the lesson. So I tend to say to my students, okay, in the lesson, in the 1 hour that we have, we're going to go through speaking, we're going to focus on vocabulary, we're going to focus on pronunciation of the new vocabulary, and we're going to review your answers of what you've done outside of class. And so I say to the student, outside of the class, what I want you to do is I want you to look at the grammar, I want you to look at the reading, I want you to do the listening and complete all the activities for that. If you can do that, we'll have more time for speaking and fluency activities. And I'm not going to waste my time explaining unless you have a question about grammar, unless you have a particular question about a certain word in the reading, or why certain things go this way or that way. So that's how I kind of split it up in terms of my lessons. And in terms of a sort of lesson plan, I tend to break it down into different stages. Let me get a Google Drive. Let me get a document up And I'll write it down, and hopefully this will give you a bit more inspiration of what I do in terms of teaching remotely. Okay, so let's just share this. Okay, I hope you can see this. Right, and I'm going to call this lesson stages 1 hour class. Okay, so lesson stages. So first of all, number one, I tend to, if I could type, welcome the student. Okay, so this could be in the form of weekend questions, you know, or weekday questions. You know, how are you? What did you do yesterday? What are your plans for this coming weekend? So just general non-pressured focus on, you know, how the student is feeling, and based on what they answer, I'll continue. But if the student says, oh, you know, I had a student the other week, you know, I said, oh, how are you, me son? You all right? And she said, oh, teacher, I'm really, really depressed at the moment. And she essentially said her email got hacked. Her company email got hacked. These hackers sent an email to their big clients in France requesting payment to be changed from what they invoiced to a new bank account. The clients were none the wiser and sent the money through to this new recipient who were the hackers. And immediately I thought, right, okay, we're not going to continue with the lesson as such as I planned, because, you know, this is obviously huge. And I could see on her face that she was distraught. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry about that, you know. And, you know, I was generally, you know, sorry that she had that issue, because it shouldn't happen to anyone. Anyway, she was talking about it, and while she was talking, I was just starting to make notes of what she was saying, and, you know, certain language which would be useful in this sort of situation. It was authentic, it was natural, and I said, you know, thanks ever so much for sharing it, and, you know, if it's all right, I'd like to share some language with you about this particular subject. And that's where the lesson diverted, and we just went a different direction to what I planned. So when you start, always be aware that what you may plan may deviate, and you may end up going a different direction. You know, by after about 20 minutes, I said, well, we can't continue with what we planned, so why don't I ask you some questions? I'll bring some questions up, I'll ask you, and I'll make a note of some of the language. And she said, yeah, that'd be really helpful, thank you. That's when we ended up focusing on speaking, pronunciation, vocabulary. Anyway, so the first stage, ask how the student is, you know, welcome the student, greet them. The second stage is, if I'm doing a very much controlled lesson, I would say to the student, or, you know, I would say, okay, look at conversation questions, you know, about the topic, as this activates schema and or schemata. Both are acceptable. And what this means is it activates, it primes the vocabulary about the topic. Okay, so the student's prepared to talk about the topic, the student's ready. And then the next one I would look at is vocabulary and pronunciation. And if I do that, I say, okay, what's one to ease? And I would say to the student, okay, what is it, a noun, a verb, an adjective? And the student says, oh, it's a verb, I know, yeah, it's a verb, yeah. All right, okay, next one. Okay, and the word that we're looking at here is knock on. And I say to the student, okay, knock on, what is it? Noun, verb, adjective, adverb? And says, oh, it's an adjective. Yeah, it's an adjective. Okay, a knock-on effect. And I say to the student, is it positive or negative? And they say, oh, I'm going to guess it's going to be positive. And I say, yeah, okay, could be. But in this sense, what we're going to have a look at is maybe a negative meaning. Anyway. And that's what I tend to focus on with regards to vocabulary and pronunciation. Then I get the student to share their answers for a gap fill, possibly. So they've already done the vocabulary, maybe a matching exercise with the vocabulary, just checking their pronunciation, checking the word families. When I say word families, you could have to allocate, and I say, okay, what's that? Okay, it's a verb. All right. And I say to the student, okay, can you tell me what is the noun form? They say, okay, all right, allocate. And I say, okay, and allocation. Okay. And these are word families. It's trying to broaden the students' awareness of particular vocabulary. Then sharing their answers for a gap fill exercise that they've done. And I go, okay, that's really good. Let's check. All done. Very good. And then I use conversation questions about, conversation questions about the vocabulary, or using the vocabulary above. Okay. So it's like, okay, you're looking at the vocabulary, you're using it in a gap fill, and then there's conversation questions which embed those. So it's like a sort of introduction, use, and then reuse or reformulate, reinforce what that particular language. Then a check, reading or listening tasks, and then final conversation and feedback. That's how I would actually plan my 60-minute lesson in that sense. So I certainly hope that does help. And the way I like to look at it is like a sort of pyramid, an upside down pyramid. So you start off very broad. Let me go back to the chat. So you start off very broad, and you about, okay, how are you, that sort of thing. And it goes down a little bit more, conversation questions about the topic, and it goes a little bit more, then more detailed about the vocabulary, the word families, and then it starts to broaden out a little bit more with conversation questions. And then you check the reading, the listening, it broadens out even more with final conversation, final feedback, and then that's when I start to allocate, okay, next lesson, please complete this, please complete that, and then we'll end up doing that sort of thing. So that's how I do a planned 60-minute lesson, or the structure of my 60-minute lesson. And then I share all the spoken feedback on Google Drive with the student. I have a nominated account or folder per student. I say, okay, that's all accessible, just download, print, whatever you want to do with all the feedback and that sort of thing. So I hope that helped, Miriam. Okay, we've got Sharif here, and Sharif says, do you think it's advisable to charge very little at the beginning just to get some students? I suppose with regards to Preply, as I mentioned before, have a look at what others are charging. If you can find profiles of people that are that are teaching what you want to teach, so if it's exam preparation, see how much are they charging on Preply, and then just lower it by $5. How much are individuals charging based on the qualifications that I have as well? And then again, just slightly lower. And as I mentioned before, just increase it after 2 months, once you've built up that momentum, once you've built up the reviews, and then that would hold. It has a lot of value, that. And everybody has to start in this respect. So one individual has to, when someone starts them properly, they have to determine, okay, what's my overall cost, and the best way to do it is to check what others are charging based on the language and that sort of thing that they're teaching, and based on what others are charging, and if they feel, actually, I've got more experience, more qualifications than this individual, so I should be rewarded more. I can understand that. However, there's going to be this sort of balance. I think in economics they call the price elasticity of demand. I'm back on my international business days when I was studying business. So if you increase your price too much, there will be a drop in demand. If you decrease your price too little, you'll be, teaching too much for too little. And you have to find that sweet spot where you go, okay, I'm happy with this, and I'm happy because it brings in enough students each week, and it brings in enough for my pocket, and I'm happy with it post-commission with Preply. But, it could swing both ways, couldn't it? And only you will know after a couple of months of this determined review, reflection on the platform. Right, moving on. Miriam says, excellent answer for setting your price per hour. Thank you. Nope, you're much appreciated. Sharif, she says, teaching online is different from in person. How do you motivate students, especially adults, to do assignments? Right. You have to tap into the intrinsic motivation for adults. With kids, young learners, they have extrinsic motivation. So, winning the game of that day, or, competing with their peers and that sort of thing. But when it comes to adults, there's particular sort of intrinsic motivation that they have. And when it comes down to that, you need to say, okay, if you really want to pass this exam, you really need to focus on this. And, I really appreciate you putting in the effort, and it's really good. I appreciate that you're turning up every week, but you really need to finish this assignment, because if you don't, this will actually cause quite a few issues in the future. So always consider how to move it around. And I kind of do the what was it? It was the feedback sandwich. It's known as something else, but I'm not going to swear on this channel. But the feedback sandwich, where you have a positive and you say, okay, really good, really appreciate your contribution, discussion in class. That's great. Focus on this. This is what you really need to focus on outside of the lesson. And if you need any help, send me an email. I'll be happy to help you. And then end with a positive, and you could say, if you do this, I can see that you're going to succeed really well, and there's no reason for you not to do it. So good luck. You'll smash it. So it's really trying to tap into that intrinsic motivation. Why are they doing the course? Why do they have to do the assignment? Are they doing the course because they want to get a promotion? That sort of thing. So tap into that intrinsic motivation. Give that sort of feedback saying you've done marvelously well so far, and try and hang that carrot in front of them saying, look, if you do this assignment, you're going to pass, you're going to do really well. I can see it. And hopefully that helps. So I hope that helps, Sharif. Okay. Do you have any tips how to ask students for a feedback to post them in my blog? Interesting. When it comes down to feedback, yeah. You could email the students directly and say, I would really appreciate any feedback that you have. And if it's all right, I'd like to share your feedback anonymously on my blog or post. So please feel free to send an email just evaluating my teaching. And this is nothing new. People have been asked to share their feedback about particular services, whether it's teaching, for example, or whether it's consultancy work. There's a sort of if you go on a company website, they have a certain page where they say customer reviews or something else like that. I don't just email the student, message the student saying, can you just say a few words about what you liked and what you enjoyed about my teaching, and I'll share that anonymously on my website, so I won't include your name. I think that would be fine, so go for it. Why not? Right. Miriam says, learning so much from this live stream, thank you. What, in your opinion, is the best way to teach tenses? Right, there are a lot of tenses to teach. It can get confusing and overwhelming. Well, tenses, I suppose in English, there's only 12. There's only 12 tenses, if I'm not mistaken. It's not many. Depends on how or which ones are used more often than the others. And I would recommend that you focus on the ones which are used more often than the less often than the ones that are not used so much. So the ones that are used more often: present simple, present perfect, present continuous, past simple, will and going to, shall. Those are the main ones that we tend to use. The others are sort of used, but not as often as the others. So there is a really good book, and bear with me, let me find it, and I'll put a link in the chat, because it's a really good book, and it's by Jim Scrivener, really good author, definitely an author that I'd recommend, so bear with me. And I've got the book here, and let's share my website, or share Google Chrome. So teaching English grammar, what to teach and how to teach it. This is the best book that you could use to develop grammar lessons if you want to. And if we have a look inside, you can see here, if we go down, scroll in, it includes a very brief introduction on how to teach grammar, and different things, collocations, conjunctions, etc, etc, etc. Right, and then we've got singular and plural, and certain things. It goes on to talk about presentation, how to present the grammar of singular, plural, and it structures it quite quickly, quite easily. Gives you some practice, how to practice the language, how students could use the language, a quick choice game, with S or ES or IES or irregular, and then concept checking questions to make sure students understand, and the different pronunciation. Is it regular with a S or a Z or a is? So this book is hugely recommended. Definitely recommend it. And let me put this in the chat, so bear with me. One of the best books out there in terms of teaching English grammar. It is really, really useful. Right. Okay. We are almost at the end, so some really, really good questions that are coming out. I can't really tell you in terms of practical ideas for teaching a business lesson, so maybe next in our next live stream. And there's something I want to tell you about next week's live stream as well. Sharif, I'm not fully aware if there's a way to print out the Preply placement test. I'm sure there is a way, but it's accessible online. I'm not sure, personally I don't see the benefit of the placement test, because some students take it and then a year later they decide to start their lessons, so it's not as relevant as it was, or one student might have taken it 2 years ago, started lessons, and then moved tutor, and then moved tutor again, and moved tutor. So it could be quite historic. So yeah, that you could set up your own placement test if you wish. Edith says, that was bright. We do need to be flexible. Yep, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Thomas Lay is here, and he says, hi there. I'm a CELTA graduate 2 years ago. Is there a refresher CELTA course, just in case if you want to go back and revise some areas? I don't think there is a sort of refresher course, but what I would recommend is that you focus on maybe approaching schools and saying, I'm returning back to English language teaching. Excuse me, I need my coffee. I'm returning back. I'm returning back to my to English language teaching, and I would really appreciate it if I could observe some lessons. Remind myself of what's expected. But if you've done the CELTA 2 years ago, you're still valid. There are still schools, and there's still things available, opportunities available, particularly in the summer when things start to build up again. So yeah, have a look. Have a look online. Approach local schools nearby you. See if there's any opportunities to do some peer teaching or, peer observations and that side of things. That's what I'd recommend. Now. Right. And thank you ever so much. Right. I'm going to be finishing off soon, but before I finish off, there's a couple of things that I want to try and focus on in terms of next week's live stream, because I have a very, very special live stream for anybody who wants to turn up, and it's going to be of a more light-hearted live stream. In preparation for Christmas. And if I remember, pre-pandemic, we all had the opportunity to go for a Christmas quiz or, socialize with our colleagues. But unfortunately, as the pandemic is now, and as many of us are teaching online, I thought I'm going to offer a Christmas quiz to everybody. And it would be really nice if you could join me next week at 1 p.m. for a Christmas quiz. I'm going to share all the information in a post very soon, so please hit that subscribe and notification bell. It'd be really nice for you to join this Christmas quiz, learn a bit more about Christmas around the world, learn about all the sort of cultures of Christmas, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be really interesting, and I'm going to dress up. I've got, a variety of things. I'll have my Christmas jumper on. It would be great to have you. It would be really nice. And we have a few final things. TP, not sure. TP, thank teach and practice. I don't know. Thank you. Okay. We got someone from Japan, I guess. Chia Noah. Thank you for your session. Your voice is really calming, really easy to hear. You're very welcome. Thank you ever so much for joining. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you will be joining me next week for our Christmas quiz. And then finally, Kazanya says, I like your videos very much, useful and informative. Back at you. Really appreciate Kazanya, and thank you ever so much for joining. And then, we have Xining. Su Xining says, thank you. Yeah, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. I really, really appreciate everybody joining. Now, as one thing that I always like to do at the end of my live stream is to read a poem, and I've got a poem here by Yeats. If you're not sure of Yeats, it's he was a very famous Irish poet, and he wrote a lot about the hardship and everything related to that. Anyhow, let me start off. And the poem that I'm going to be reading today is Why Should Not Old Men Be Mad? Okay. Why should not old men be mad? Some have known a likely lad that had a sound fly fisher's wrist turn to a drunken journalist. A girl that knew all Dante wants lived to bear children to a dunce. A Helen of social welfare dream climb on a wagonette to scream. Some think it matter of course that chance should starve good men and bad advance, that if their neighbours figured plain, as though upon a lighted screen, no single story would they find of an unbroken happy mind, a finish worthy of the start. Young men know nothing of this sort. Observant old men know it well, and when they know what old books tell, and that no better can be had, know why an old man should be mad. Right. I really appreciate everybody joining. I really do. Thank you ever so much for joining. I hope it was really useful. I really appreciate all your comments, all your questions. Sorry I couldn't answer everybody's questions, but I certainly hope that you could join next week's Christmas live stream. And thank you ever so much. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely week. I'll see you next week. Take it easy. Happy teaching. Stay safe, particularly in this environment. And yeah, again, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.